Hey everyone, it's Lisa here from the podcast Her Healing Hour. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it is the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. Number one, it's free. Number two, there are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your mobile phone or your computer. Number three, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and many more. Number four, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Number five, it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the Anchor free app right now or go to anchor.fm to get started. Bye. Hello everyone. Welcome back to another installment of Her Healing Hour. I'm your host, Lisa, aka the AlkaliYogi. Now I know this episode is a little bit late. It was produced on Monday, but when I played it back, I realized I wanted to refine it. And so thank you for bearing with me. I've now refined the episode and I want to get right into it because I'm so excited to speak to you about EMFs. Are they friend? Are they foe? Well, I want to bring your attention to my findings and also my concerns surrounding the dangers of EMFs. Let me begin by stating what to some will be obvious. Yes, EMFs do exist in the natural environment. Sun rays, UV rays, magnetic fields, and other low voltage electricity. They are indeed everywhere in the natural environment. But what's changed in the last 70 to 80 years is the addition and the widespread exposure to man-made EMFs. And what is created by man is not the same as what is created by nature. When nature produces EMFs, it's bioavailable for whatever purpose they serve in the natural world. And these EMFs coexist with the flora life, plant life, animal life, as well as human life on the planet. Although it is important to distinguish that too much of anything can, of course, be harmful. There is, in fact, too much of things that are natural as well. There could be too much hydration, too much sleep. You could be training too much. Too much of anything will have a negative impact, even if it's natural, because the formula for success is balance, even when it's found in nature. But what about man-made EMFs? How do they integrate into the human body? What happens if we're too exposed to man-made electricity? If too much exposure to sun rays can be harmful, is it not somehow true also for man-generated rays? Could there not be too much of that? I continue to argue that man cannot compete with nature. Whatever man produces is simply not imbued with nature's wisdom. So to me, it cannot integrate or become bioavailable to us. But the thing with Mother Nature, is she doesn't spend tens of millions of advertising dollars to convince you that you can't have too much of said good thing. She's not funding or purchasing studies that will influence you one way or the other. She's not engaged in conjuring confusion and chaos that has literally polarized us. But do you know who does participate in these shenanigans? Corporations. If you advocate for more pharmaceutical drugs, vaccines, intrusive healthcare, just as an example, because by the way, the healthcare industry is really nothing more than a corporation, ask yourself, who gains? America is far and away the sickest population on the planet, whilst being the richest country on the planet. Who's really rich, though, in America? I would say it's those that are selling to you. Selling you things that you don't need, things that are making you sick. The third largest killer in America after cancer and heart disease is medical injuries. So it sounds to me like they perhaps have perfected selling you things that you don't need and are simply not good for you. Just look around you. Do you know anyone that's not sleeping well, that's depressed, maybe anxious? Do you know anyone that's struggling to conceive? These are but a few of the symptoms that have become so commonplace now. And they've become common because we have allowed corporate interest to take precedent over our well-being. And elected officials, i.e. the government, they're not doing their part to protect us. In less than 100 years, we have introduced our lives, our bodies, to electricity in the home, electricity in the workplace, and electricity in public spaces, virtually everywhere we find ourselves. This is a massive departure from how our ancestors, and when I'm speaking about our ancestors, I'm saying as recently as our grandparents used to live. So you have high ionizing radiation. And high ionizing radiation, well, that covers things like X-rays, all the way to gamma and nuclear radiation. We now know that high ionizing radiation actually breaks down DNA. But there was a time when science had not caught up, and so we did not know that, which is why X-rays were so commonplace. At one point, they were even in department stores. Now that we do know about the dangers of X-rays / high ionizing radiation, there are label warnings everywhere and disclaimers provided so that you understand the risk that you're taking if you're choosing to either be X-rayed or walk through an X-ray. So you see, what I'm saying is things are constantly evolving and things are being revealed to us over time. Now that we know the dangers that X-ray pose to us, they're not as common, right? A doctor has to really weigh out the risk cost benefit of sending a patient through an X-ray. And then you have non-ionizing radiation, such as Bluetooth, cell towers, mobile phones, and good old electricity, which was initially thought could not break down DNA because it doesn't overheat human tissue. As it turns out, in real time, what we're discovering is this was a flawed assumption. That's pretty scary. Dr. Martin Pal, a professor at Washington State University, conducted his own study independently of big tech. What he found is EMFs impact neurological and neuropsychiatric function in a cumulative fashion. The higher the number of exposure, the more severe the effects over time. Eventually, the damage becomes irreversible and can cause anything from the inability to sleep. It can cause high anxiety, the inability to concentrate, depression, poor memory, and headaches, to name but a few. Dr. Pal's work focuses on understanding the relationship between EMFs and the activation of voltage-gated calcium channels, which are present in every cell membrane in the body, but play a particularly important role in electrically active tissues, such as the nervous system and the heart. He explains that the electrical forces produced by EMFs impose a force on the voltage sensors that's 7.2 million times stronger than the force imposed by the cells in our bodies. And in his studies, Dr. Pal found that in fact, EMFs do damage DNA, but in a way that's very different from high ionizing radiation. The primary difference being that the majority of the damage occurs after exposure. He found that susceptibility to EMFs leads to an overflow of calcium in the cells. This leads to oxidative damage to the cells. That then leads to self-perpetuating inflammation on a cellular level. And ladies and gentlemen, if you're following along with me, that is the breeding ground for chronic illness. How many people are struggling right now with inflammation in the body? The inflammation on a cellular level is a much harder challenge to tackle. It can be reversed, but it takes a lot of intention. Let's look at it a different way. We know that water is a conductor. And we also know that we, as humans, are primarily made up of water. In fact, no less than 3/4 of us is H2O. Have you observed in a microwave that the way that water reacts to the frequency and the radiation in a microwave oven? As the intensity of the frequency and the vibration intensifies in a microwave oven, water boils, right? So imagine that same thing happening in our own bodies. When too much exposure to radiation, and frequently, our bodies, our cells, are experiencing a similar reaction to that of water boiling in a microwave oven. That is not a conducive internal environment for health. We find ourselves absolutely surrounded by 5G towers. They are smaller, they are more potent than their prior generations. And they were rolled out with virtually no testing as to the effect that they would have on the natural environment and humans, more or less making us guinea pigs. So why the big rollout? Why the big push? Sure, everyone wants faster, more reliable internet and streaming. I get it. I'm benefiting from it as we speak. But at what cost? Even pharmaceutical drugs are required to list off dangers associated with the intake of said drugs. They have to legally list off possible side effects. We've all seen that in these endless commercials where more than half of the commercial is actually dedicated to running through a list of potential side effects. And though that may not deter everyone, at least it's keeping you informed. But we don't see the same here with modems and mobile phones. Why? Why is this not the case? Where are the regulatory bodies in place that are supposed to protect citizens from harmful effects that come from too much exposure to electricity? My guess is we don't see these labels because, well, it would negatively impact the bottom line of these corporations who are at the helm. And what's become more evident is that there's no regulation because, frankly, there's too much money to be made by having as many people online as often as possible. But there are some countries that are choosing to take these studies very seriously and have been banning mobile phones, not only from spaces like maternity wards, but also children. So if you go to parentsforsafetechnology.org, I found a fascinating article on how some countries are choosing to protect, at the very least, their children. In France, for instance, for example, Wi-Fi has been banned from nursery schools. Wi-Fi must be turned off in elementary schools when not in use. And cell phone advertisements must recommend headsets to reduce exposure to brain. Let's look at Belgium. Phones that are designated for children under 7 years old are prohibited from sale. What's Spain doing? while Spain voted to urge removal of Wi-Fi in schools and to apply the precautionary principle in relation to exposure limits to electromagnetic fields whose boundaries have become obsolete. And what about Israel? In Israel, preschool through second grade have banned the use of wireless networks. That's just to name a few. Okay? But what's happening over here on this side of the pond? From what I can tell, not much. And why are our children not being protected? I guess my question is, what does it profit you to access the World Wide Web if you're going to lose your own health? I mean, this is kind of a wordplay on a famous biblical proverb, but I imagine that there are millions of people that would happily come offline if they knew how it could potentially harm us and our children. Health advocate and journalist, as well as esteemed author of the best-selling book, The Non-Tinfoil Guide to EMFs, How to Fix Our Stupid Use of Technology, Mr. Nick Pineau. Mr. Pineau made a striking observation. He said, what we don't know yet about EMFs and their harm to water cells or microbiomes and mitochondria is actually far scarier than the little that we do know. And Mr. Pineau makes another compelling argument. There are no biologists or scientists on the board of directors or even on the engineering teams of any of these tech giants to even so much as raise concern over whether these signals are compatible sensors for human cells and human DNA. Like, that would be like me producing a beverage, for mass consumption, and there is no FDA or regulatory body or agency independent of this drink that I'm creating to test the effects and potential harm of this drink on the masses. Think about that for a second. There are checks and balances. Hang on, maybe I didn't give you guys a great example. I may have failed you on this one because I realized actually that soda is one of these beverages that is available for mass consumption and globally with not only zero benefits, health benefits, but it's actually very harmful. But I guess, if someone is getting a paycheck, and if it becomes legal, we'll say, if it's profitable for corporate giants. I hate to say it, but that's my 2 cents on soda, but let's get back to EMFs. So, I guess it comes back to us at the end of the day. When do we form an inquisitive enough mind that we take the time to research and test out our products for ourselves and how they impact us in the long to medium term? Because almost anything can pass a short-term trial. After all, the body is not just a miracle, it's extremely forgiving. Dr. Klinghart, he's an MD and a PhD, currently teaching at Washington State and founder of the Sophia Health Institute, where he has been treating patients from all over the globe and from every single background. He has found unequivocally that everyone, no matter what they were suffering from, benefited tremendously from simply reducing their EMF loads. Something that no other doctor prior to him had prescribed. In fact, Dr. Klinghart was for many the last option or resort to treat their chronic illness like cancer or MS. His success rate has not only made him credible, but he's soughtly after. He is sought after, is what I'm trying to say. He's greatly sought after. And Dr. Klinghart, you could say, is very much a pioneer in prescribing aggressive detoxification as part of his medical treatment strategies. Many other studies that have taken place since he's prescribed the heavy detoxification have also pointed in the same direction, which is Chemical and heavy metal toxicity is at the core of many medical issues that contribute to neurological illnesses, fatigue, autism, and many, many more. But this shouldn't be surprising, right? I mean, it's 1 + 1 = 2. Of course, chemicals and heavy metal toxicity is going to be a breeding ground and bring illness into the body because those things don't belong in the body. Another way to think about it, I'm going to take an example here from Paul Chek. The way that our environments are right now is that we don't get a single break from EMFs anywhere. That would be like training your body 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, with no break. No space for repair and restoration. That's all catabolic stress on the body with no anabolic repair cycle. That's frightening to me. This is the world that we've created, and I believe it's the fast track to our expiration dates. What could it hurt you to spend less time exposed to radiation? What could it hurt you? How valuable is your health? The reality is we're not doing well. Many people aren't sleeping at night at all, and if they are sleeping, they're not sleeping well. Many are suffering from some level of anxiety and/or depression. We have brought a lot of this on ourselves for the convenience of our modern lives. And when criticism arises that encourages us to keep up the status quo, to blindly place all of our trust in these companies that have steered us wrong on more than one occasion, I ask once again, who stands to benefit from this? Follow the money all the way to the top. After all, they, and I'm using air quotes, thought high ionizing radiation was safe at one point. Turns out it's not. They told us fluoride in water was a good idea. In fact, they were wrong. They filled our cavities with mercury, and now there is a major effort to remove mercury from people's fillings because it's poisoning us. So you see, things are constantly changing. We're finally just now beginning to see independent studies that are credible and that prove that constant exposure to electricity and non-high ionizing radiation does in fact break down the DNA. And then ask yourself, what does someone like me have to gain by sharing my findings and my concerns with you about EMFs? I think that as responsible consumers, we could all benefit to learn to follow the money trail to the top. Because exposing us to more Wi-Fi, more media, more soda, more pharmaceutical drugs, even more vaccine, who exactly benefits from that? I don't think we're benefiting. Because if you look around, we are sicker than we've ever been. Our parents are healthier than most of us. Even our youth is not protecting us at this point. That's how toxic our environment and our lifestyle has become. And consider this. We are becoming the largest involuntary case study in history. That is scary AF to me. To quote my friend, mentor, and level 4 Czech practitioner, Peter Strange, he said, "Science is never settled." We're seeing proof of that again right now, right? Aren't we seeing it right now? Because now we know that fluoride and X-rays are harmful to us, but years ago, the consensus or the mainstream media was telling us something else. So just as science is never settled, neither are our viewpoints. And it's important that before we form those viewpoints, that we have given our full attention to the two independent opposing views before making our decision. But I find that today, more and more, everything is one-sided. We're just seeing one singular point of view, whether it's regarding EMFs or whether it's regarding vaccines or even politics. This is the beginning of the end of free thought. Unless we make a conscious choice to investigate matters on our own, corruption is everywhere. It is not a conspiracy. It's a reality. I don't see what choice we have but to investigate matters on our own. To refer back to a previous episode, in episode 5 titled, Move, It Will Help, I quoted Dr. Marcia Angel. She's the first woman physician to serve as the editor-in-chief of the New England Journal of Medicine, and currently she's a senior lecturer in the Department of Global Health and Social Medicine at Harvard Medical School. What she said was so relevant, it bears repeating now. In her 2009 article, Drug Companies and Doctors, a story of corruption that was published in the New York Review of Books magazine, Angel wrote, similar conflicts of interest and biases exist in virtually every field of medicine, particularly those that rely heavily on drugs or devices. It is simply no longer possible to believe much of the clinical research that is published or to rely on the judgment of trusted physicians or authoritative medical guidelines. I take no pleasure in this conclusion, which I reached slowly and reluctantly over my 2 decades as the editor of the New England Journal of Medicine. And if you're familiar with this Journal of Medicine, the New England Journal of Medicine, it is the most revered in the world. Notice that her statement is fairly broad and directed at the industry as a whole. She's not singled out any one company or manufacturer. Ask yourself, what could she possibly gain by warning consumers and patients alike? And if this is happening in the pharma industry, how are we to believe that it's not happening in big tech? Big tech now being far greater, far richer, far more powerful than even big pharma. Well, thankfully for us, there are government agencies that are in place to protect us from harmful radiation. One such body is the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission. But sadly, according to the Harvard Center of Ethics, the FCC is a captured agency by big tech. And that is why the FCC has failed at their job to protect us. More recently, Investigate Europe, which is made up of some of the best investigative journalists in Europe, found that ICNIRP stands for the International Commission for Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, when investigated, were in fact nothing more than an industry-influenced cartel with a revolving door between the regulatory agency, big tech, and ICNIRP itself. This is not unbiased. And it's ICNIRP that sets the standard globally for the protection of all citizens around the globe when it comes to non-ionizing radiation. And now we know that they've also been corrupted. But we still have a fight in this. We can still do our part. And it is my job as a holistic lifestyle coach to share some tips on how you can lessen your exposure to the dangers of EMFs. So all hope is not lost. We just have to be, again, active participants in restoring our health and well-being, even if it means that we are swimming against the current. For starters, keep your mobile off your person. Place it in a purse or a man purse, no judgment, a fanny pack, whatever, a rucksack. Create whatever distance you can between you and your device. Put your mobile on airplane mode at night. It turns out that you can still use your alarm clock without connecting it to data or Wi-Fi. And if you don't need an alarm, place your mobile in a different room altogether. Unplug your Wi-Fi router. There is so much radiation all around you, between the cell towers, your neighbor's Wi-Fi, and that plain old electricity that runs to the home. At the very least, unplug your own router since you have no control over your neighbor's router or the cell towers near your home. Add EMF stickers to your devices or a shungite stone. A shungite is a black lustrous, non-crystalline mineraloid that consists of mostly carbon, about 98%. This will help to neutralize the radiation. And finally, and maybe my favorite recommendation would be, bring plant life into your home. Plants are natural and they are an excellent way to neutralize the harmful effects of electromagnetic radiation. So I'm going to list here a few of them for you. Number 1, the cactus plant. And it's low maintenance. How can you go wrong with that? Number 2, snake plant. And they're beautifully green. Number 3, a spider plant. Number 4, a betel leaf plant. I'm not personally familiar with this plant, but it is really beautiful and kind of resembles like luscious basil. Number 5, the stone lotus flower. Again, super low maintenance. Number 6, aloe vera, which has multiple benefits. It's great for your skin too, and for any burns or cuts. Number 7, although this one is one of the best absorbers, be mindful of this one in your home. Number 8, an asparagus fern. So cute. Number 9, mustard greens, which are also delicious in your salad. And lastly, number 10, the rubber plant. All of these help to absorb electromagnetic waves, especially when stored near your electrical devices. And there you go. Mother Nature once again comes to the rescue. Won't she do it? Until next time, be well and stay well, please. From the AlkaliYogi. You can find me on all my socials at AlkaliYogi, and you can also email me at AlkaliYogi@yahoo.com. AlkaliYogi is spelled exactly as it sounds. AlkaliYogi@yahoo.com. Also, check out Alkaline Yoga Retreats, which is spelled AlkaliYogaRetreats on Instagram for our upcoming healing retreats at Usha Village, home of Dr. Sebi. Thank you again for tuning in. I hope you got something out of this. Let me know your thoughts, your considerations, your amendments, your deletions, your whatever. I'm here for it all. This is a conversation. Thank you for your support. Until next week, signing off.